Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of our introductory material for Lord of the Flies. Today we're going to be focusing more on Golding's view towards war, as well as is this novel an anti-war novel? Is it against World War II? Is this against the Cold War? What is the context for what is written, and why would he be writing this novel at this specific time period? So first, let's discuss the quote I had posted earlier this week. This is by William Golding. It says, "Before the Second World War, I believed that the perfectibility of social man, that a correct structure of society would produce goodwill, and that therefore you could remove all social ills by reorganization of society. But after the war I did not, because I was unable to. I had discovered what one man could do to another. I must say that anyone who moved through those years without understanding that man produces evil as a bee produces honey must have been blind or wrong in the head." So what does he basically say? He's saying that in the beginning, before he had been exposed to war in the Second World War, he believed that society could produce this ultimate good. That if people worked together, they then would create a society that benefited everyone. That goodwill in humanity is based off of a correct social structure. But then there was a shift. Once he went to war, he noticed what people could do to one another when put in situations. What he argued was it was not necessarily needed for society to be good is this proper structure, but rather when this structure is put into place, anyone could be corrupted and then do atrocities towards one another. It's interesting that he claims that he had a paradigm shift. He says that once I did believe that society could structure a goodwill among men. However, now that I've been exposed to the opposite, I realize that men are the cause of corruption. Therefore, society made by men could not possibly create goodwill, but rather would do the opposite when everyone's put at an equal playing field. Someone will always exploit that dynamic. When everyone is leveled, there will always be one to exploit the leveling of a society. So, with that in mind, let's talk about whether this is an anti-war novel. It was published in 1954. What was going on in 1954? Well, World War II had ended in 1945. Therefore, 9 years later, this rise of communism is beginning in the Soviet Union as well as in other places in the country. So, as an Englishman that Golding was, he believed in democratic socialism. That was fairly common in the English area, and so he believed that communism was incorrect. Therefore, we should lean towards a more democratic socialist environment. This was the Cold War. So we have characters that represent specific worldviews. We're not going to go too in-depth at the moment. I don't want to spoil the book for you. But as I mentioned, Ralph, Piggy, and Jack represent these ideologies. We have Ralph, who represents kind of the normal tradition, that we need to work together, however there needs to be a person at a head to kind of help this environment. This was the environment that was adopted by Great Britain, and then America also has a tradition, not democratic socialism, but kind of this system of democracy. What we have also is Jack. He almost represents this idea of the communist state. So what we have is obviously they're at odds with each other. It does not start out aggressive. However, as Golding states, a reorganization of a society does not create goodwill, although it might be intended to. It creates division and it creates exploitation. So what he's basically saying in this novel, the context of the novel itself, is this environment of, can organization of society be good? Can there be a purest form, or rather, is it just the innate humanity of people that create corruption? Why does he put it in the context of children? He puts it in the context of children because they're viewed as innocent. In literature, there's this idea, this dichotomy, meaning two contrasting ideas, of innocence versus experience. It's often seen in coming-of-age novels, especially novels that deal with children as the protagonist. They start innocent, not knowing how the world works. However, some event or traumatic experience creates the shift from innocence to experience. They at once were naive to the world, and now they are of the world. They understand how it works. So putting this dichotomy in place with children, as well as an anti-war narrative, he's showing that even the most innocent can create corruption, simply because that is how life works. Again, his quote to end this segment off: understanding that men produce evil as a bee produces honey. It is not because society has created a negative environment, but rather because society is made of people creates a negative environment. So with that, starting next week, we're going to get into chapter 1 of the Lord of the Flies novel. What's basically going to happen is I'm going to post the story, and then there will be a discussion on, I'll post it on Tuesday, and then discussion will be on Friday. With that, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next week.